Just run away is the most common self-defense advice of all time. And it makes sense. It's usually a good idea to avoid danger if at all possible. But what do you do when running is what gets you in trouble in the first place? Because believe it or not, one of the most commonly targeted groups is runners, who usually travel alone miles away from the closest bystander. Fortunately, there's a whole industry of self-defense tools made specifically for runners. But today, we're going to be talking about one of the classics, and one that I think is often overlooked. Today, we're going to talk about the most vilified weapon of all time, the brass knuckle. One of the important things I ask myself when we're talking about different self-defense weapons is, who is it for and what are their needs? So if we're talking about runners, they're wearing clothes that don't usually have deep pockets, and if they have any kind of bag on, it's maybe a small fanny pack or a sling over the shoulder. There's not a lot of room to carry something like a gun or a knife. Plus, because the danger usually comes to them, they better have it on them as the threat emerges. Now, basic self-defense 101 dictates that we should, at all times, be aware of our surroundings, as in keep your eyes open and at least one ear available, be intimidating, and be armed. Now, this video can't really help you with the first one, but for the second two, we have the fist knuckle. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I have not historically been a fan of brass knuckles. The traditional design feels really awkward in the hand, and their reputation is more associated with truck stop brawls and mobsters than anything I wanna use for self-defense. But this set of brass knuckles, which was sent to me by edcweapons.com, link in my description, completely turned my opinion around. This right here is the fist knuckle black aluminum alloy light. And as you can see, it is a very different design than traditional brass knuckle. Now, if you like this design, more power to you. But for me, I find this a lot more useful. I like the open finger design, and the puño button at the end, which we'll talk about more later, makes it a lot more useful for hammer fisting and punching. The fist knuckle is extremely lightweight, and the palm end of it is small enough that you can comfortably hold on to your phone or water bottle, which is important when we're talking about self-defense for runners. Because you don't want to have to fumble around in your pockets, if you even have any, or opening up a fanny pack just to grab your self-defense tool. If you think you're already in danger, it should already be in your hand. So the brass knuckle falls into the category of what I call minimalist self-defense, meaning it's for somebody who wants a tool to protect themselves with, but doesn't have a lot of room to store it. Now, we should talk about the historical context and popular perception of brass knuckles. Brass knuckles have been around since the dawn of weapons. It doesn't take a lot of engineering to recognize we like to hit people with a closed fist, but sometimes that hurts. So let's put something over that fist to make our job a little bit easier. By the way, that's what we call a force multiplier, and we'll talk about that in a second. Now, even though the brass knuckle has been used by everybody from gladiators to soldiers, their more modern usage has been primarily for street fighting. Let's talk now about the spectrum of tools versus weapons. This right here is a tactical flashlight. It is a tool that's meant to help you see things. But in the trained hands, it's actually an effective force multiplying weapon. This is a knife. This is also a tool, but without any training at all, it is also a very effective, deadly weapon. Now, in the spectrum of tools, as in things that can be used as a weapon but have other purposes, and weapons, as in things that are primarily used to hurt people, the brass knuckle is pretty exclusively a weapon. In fact, you could even argue it's more of a weapon than a knife is. So in general, I recommend that people carry a multi-purpose tool like a flashlight, like a tactical pen. But if we're talking specifically about runners, particularly female runners, I recommend giving themselves the advantage with the brass knuckle. Now, as to how to wear the brass knuckle. Some people will choke it up as close as possible to their palm, which is fine, but be aware the palm end might dig into your hand when you actually try to hit something. Instead, I recommend sliding it over your second knuckles, which will give you a little more range and mean you don't have to contort your hand as much trying to hit somebody. But play with it, see what works for you. Now, when it comes to what the best punch to use with the brass knuckles is, I recommend the jab, because it's the longest punch you can throw while also moving in the opposite direction. So I can use my jab like a shield to keep my attacker away from me while also breaking off in the opposite direction. But if we want to create some power with this strike, we'll do what's called the stepping overhand. So using the same punching side hand, I'm going to use my opposite hip to generate force. So I'm going to step through into the opposite stance, turning this from a straight punch, which you can still do, into more of a looping overhand, When's the context for this? I don't know, but it's cool. So let's talk about common ways we might find ourselves being attacked. The most fortuitous way to be attacked would be when your attacker is directly in front of you. Maybe he was waiting for us at the car, or he cut us off as we were coming to a fork in the road, whatever. This person decided the best way to attack you is directly in front of you, which is great because now I have all of my weapons available to me. Now, if we're talking about bare knuckle striking, you tend to want to avoid bone-on-bone collision because that might hurt you just as much as it hurts him. But not so when we had the fist knuckle, because now I can throw everything with reckless abandon at whatever I want. I actually recommend aiming right here above the eyebrow, so ideally you cut it and it bleeds into their eye, making it hard for them to see you. Or if you want to do some real damage, aim for what's known as the philtrum, which is this little area right here at the upper lip, or even the septum right there at the bottom of the nose. You strike that, I guarantee you they're going to cry home to their mama. But again, you can hit whatever you want and you'll see success. Let's talk now about force multipliers. Let's say when I come up to hit Bob, the most damage I can do barehanded is move him a little bit and give him a slight bruise. Maybe I have bad punching technique, maybe I'm just weak, whatever, tell me down in the comments. But when I take something like the brass knuckle in my hand, now I can cut open his skin, knock him to the ground, and possibly break his jawbone. I have multiplied the force that I can use with less effort. So now, instead of having to come in here and devote my whole body weight to knocking him out, I can instead easily flick this punch in, do not only the same amount of damage, but even more. But what if our attacker decides to not be a gentleman and instead chooses to attack us from the side? Let's say right now he chooses to grab us by the arm to try and pull us away. Most traditional brass knuckle designs focus on the knuckle end of that conversation and don't offer much in the realm of hammer fisting. The thing is, hammer fisting is a lot easier for most people to understand than boxing punches are. You have to train people to throw straight punches, but you don't really have to train them to swing their fists at each other. So if our attacker comes in and grabs us from the side, I can take the puño of this thing and dig it into their hand, forearm, or bicep, and if they choose not to release at that point, drive it into their head, go back down to the arm, rinse and repeat until I'm satisfied. Please forgive me for this very crude Wing Chun dummy. I needed it to make a point. Now, normally I don't advocate relying on striking the limbs in self-defense because 9 times out of 10 that's not really very effective, but now we have the fist knuckle. So now when my attacker grabs hold of me, I don't have to only rely on striking the face. I can also go straight into the arm, go to the leg, go to where the sun don't shine, whatever you feel like, you can hit it and expect to do damage. All that being said, you can only get good at what you practice. So if you want to actually be able to rely on these things for self-defense, you need to learn some boxing. You need to learn how to throw your jab, how to follow up with the hook, how to finish with the uppercut, and then if you want to add in the karate chops, take some karate, or even some Aikido. Oh my God, did I just find a use for Aikido. Point is, even though brass knuckles are only one step above small rock, you should still train with that small rock. Bottom line, the brass knuckle has been going in and out of favor for decades. But that's only because of how effective it actually is. Because the truth is, brass knuckles are a brutally effective, simple tool that pack a huge punch. Pun definitely intended. That being said, I do have to do my due diligence and say, brass knuckles are not legal everywhere and they're not legal all the time. So check your local laws. But if you are in a group that could benefit from a minimalist self-defense tool, I definitely recommend the brass knuckle. However, if you're just some jackass looking for a tool you can use to beat people up, this is not the video for you. That being said, if you want to grab a pair of fist knuckles for yourself, remember the link down in my description. As well, make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and send this video to someone you can beat up in a fight. Boom!